Another Esoterror podcast. We would have had one out earlier, but we were trying new technology. And so we recorded for about an hour and a half. That was just pure fire, lightning in a bottle. And then we go back and we look at the thing and we didn't actually capture any audio. So today we are again trying another approach that I think we've gotten the hang of via Skype and everything that'll allow for some screen sharing just to corroborate all of the craziness that we're talking about and showing y'all that there are far crazier things than what is written in your philosophy, Horatio. And so myself, Dusty Pumpkin on Instagram, Adam Rossmiller, and it's 6GrimX on all of your social media platforms from TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and whatnot. And today, as we had tried the previous week, we're going to be talking about CERN and the Large Hadron Collider that they have there that spans beneath multiple countries from Sweden to Spain and all of the dark arts that they are practicing down there.
So I also want to give a shout out to our other platforms. We have YouTube, Spotify, and Patreon. You can look us all up on those as Esoterror.
We'll have merch coming before too long once somebody gives us the green light. T-shirts, stickers, all kinds of fun stuff. Also, a shout out to the guy that does our intro song. It is Colabos. The song is Red Fog by one Ron Dante, who we love absolutely dearly and is just one of the greatest musicians around.
Yep, shout out Ron. And we'd like to give a shout out to the community. Like Adam said, it's a big part of what we do. Just having people we can relate to, it's a big deal for us, and it really helps us to heal, do other things in our lives too. This isn't just for the community; it's also for us in that way. And we're hoping that we can express ideas and help heal. And if anyone has anything that they want to talk about, anything they want to share with the community, go ahead and leave that in the comments. I do try to check all the comments, almost every one of them, and I'll try to respond to them as quickly as I can. Within at least 3 days, I should be able to respond back to them. But anything you want us to talk about, anything you want to share with the community, feel free to share those in the comments below.
We're absolutely always excited to hear from each and every one of y'all. And at that, yeah, let's get it started with CERN. As to you're more knowledgeable as to the history, the construction, the uh, very curious artworks that they have outside of the main hub.
So, and I mean, I don't know, this could be a Mandela effect. If you look it up online, it's saying that CERN fired on September 10th, 2008. But from what I'm understanding, they had issues and they fired much, much later. But we're talking about CERN and how there's a possibility that it's tied to the Mandela effect or even creating them, which the Mandela effect was coined by Fiona Brown in 2009. She was at a conference and she realized there she was one of the people that believed that Mandela died in the 70s while in prison. And as questioning people, she found out within like 30 people at this event that there was two vastly different memories of this one experience. So half the people believed he died in the 70s, and the other half knew he got out and became the president and died later on. What was it, 2013, I believe he passed away in?
Yeah, yeah. But again, I mean, that's where it gets a little bit fuzzy in terms of the supposed Mandela effect. And a little bit of background is that the Mandela effect is a phenomena that occurs that it is associated with the very first firing of this Large Hadron Collider. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, but hang on, Adam. Before you go on to that picture, can you move the screen over to the left? Because I want to show the audience, for those that are watching, that CERN logo is a 666.
Oh, yeah.
See the sixes in it? It's three
Yep.
sixes.
And it also kind of intimates like the passage of the molecules that they are colliding together. But it certainly does represent it in the patterns of sixes, which is
And
uh,
it's got the
that's a lot
Vesica
of
Pisces right there
yeah.
where the ERN is.
Yeah.
So, also another occult thing outside of CERN, because there's a lot of occult things tied to CERN. So it's built in Switzerland, or and they have yeah, Shiva outside of it, which is the goddess of destruction. So, I mean, the Large Hadron Collider, they say, was originally created to discover the building blocks of the galaxy, of the universe, trying to find the original particles of the Big Bang Theory so that they could understand our creation, I guess, into this universe. But Adam had a better explanation on the video that we weren't able to do about how they're swinging the particles around until they're able to hit, and it's basically creating a black hole. And the dangers of this is with creating a black hole in our universe, we could collapse our own universe in on itself. Now, the idea is that they say that they're looking, if the realities are pages in a book, then each page represents a known universe. And if we can punch a pinhole in one and leak that information into our universe, then we can get other knowledge. But the thing is that the windows that they're creating aren't windows, they're doorways. So whatever information we get pulled from one universe, another one can too.
And to
And
walk that back, sorry, the intention of CERN is that with these Large Hadron Colliders, why they have these gigantic rings that span over several countries in one of the previous images that I had shown, is that they need as much of runway as possible. They begin with two elements, one molecule here, one molecule here, and then they send them on a path around the orbit of these giant rings that are suspended magnetically. And as they are suspending these and swinging them around multiple times, then once they reach whatever velocity, if it's terminal velocity or beyond terminal velocity, then they calibrate the magnets to align these two molecules to smack into each other at such an extent that their mass can't give enough per the velocity of these two items colliding. And so what it creates instead is a tear in the fabric of the space around it. And so this creates all kinds of interesting things that they're super excited to talk about, is that when that tear occurs, new molecules that did not exist within the vacuum of this magnetic structure emerge from that tear. Everything from what they describe as the God particle. There actually have been a couple of reports, which I didn't get a chance to look into, that there are like new elements that are coming out of this, or elements in a pure state that shouldn't be able to exist without bonding to another element. And again, just kind of to walk it back a little bit, is that the idea of the Mandela effect is that every time that one of these tears happens anywhere within our reality, it seems to be piercing into something else, which then creates the phenomena of the Mandela effect, is that it actually changes the nature of our reality. And it's something so minuscule, finite, such as creating shifts in minor things that people wouldn't really recognize if it weren't for the internet and people being able to connect and corroborate this against millions, if not fractions of billions of people across the planet, that where once you had the Berenstain Bears, you now have the Berenstein Bears, or vice versa, or what have you. Bible passages changing. Luke, I am your father versus no, I am your father, or mirror, mirror on the wall versus magic mirror on the wall. I myself had kind of a Mandela effect far before the firing of the Large Hadron Collider. As a kid, I was convinced that my folks had taken me on a trolley ride in Denver. And then I'd get really upset when they explained to me that there weren't any trolleys in Denver, and there hadn't been any trolleys in Denver since circa 1930 or something. And so to the audience, if anybody has like a notable Mandela effect, synchronicities, whatever it is, if you guys want to hit us up in the chat, hit us up down below. We'd be more than happy to talk about it, because we just love corroborating unique experiences, which is probably the best thing that the internet has to offer.
so there's a lot of theories on what the Mandela effect really is. I mean, and what I was getting towards with what I was saying with the mirrors and the windows, and Adam saying about the tears, is I believe we created a paradox. And by opening one reality into another, two realities can exist in the same plane in physics. So eventually, the realities are going to absorb into each other, especially if there's slight differences. And with that, when they absorb into each other, energy doesn't just dissipate, it merges. And I believe that if there was another person of you here, a multiverse version of you, um, whoever had the stronger consciousness is the one who survives, and that's why I believe that there's multiple memories caused out of that. And then with that paradox, because we have now opened the universe into our universe and they merge, there's another one following behind it. So we're outrunning the one behind us to destroy this one and merge and become a new reality. And what I think is that this Pandora's box, has made it to where we're never going to be able to stop now, because it's like an Ouroboros. It's constantly eating itself, and with the multiverse, who knows what the possibilities are. And so what Adam was saying, that people have personal Mandela effects. Now, the thing about a Mandela effect is that's your memories. And when people are telling you your memories are wrong, now you start to feel like you're crazy. And maybe that's one of the theories, that it is a psyop. Adam and I were just discussing this before the cameras came on. Is that, and I told him that is one of the theories out there, is that maybe they did change things. But the thing that is really hard with that is like books or VHSs, things like that people are using to prove some of the Mandela effects that they've had in their families for many years. And they go in, you put in a VHS, and it's what it is in this universe instead of what they remember. Or you go to the Bible where it talks about the lion and the lamb, instead it says the lion and the wolf. And I mean, some Bibles, they're over 140 years old, if not longer. And if a person goes to it and opens it, and now it's changed from what they remember, like, my thing is, how do they get in everyone's homes and change everything? But the real thing with the Mandela effect is, since the term was coined in 2009, I really think that maybe that's a Mandela effect in itself, because the rumor is that the CERN fires the Large Hadron Collider actually for the first time in 2012, which, what else happened in 2012, Adam? The supposed end of the Mayan calendar and the end of the Earth, right? Which I believe was when the original universe I came from came to an end.
Yeah. And since the passing of 2012, I remember that back in the day, Delaine and I met each other in 2003 in art college, and we were all talking about our conspiracy theories about the end of the world, and everybody was convinced that it was going to be 2012. We had known each other in 2012. I feel like we had a special party or something. It was maybe a show that Travis Picture Plane had hosted, and it was all about like, oh yeah, it's happening, like, here we go, it's the lifting of the veil, the great apocalypse being the definition of apocalypse, the lifting of the veil. And nothing happened that we could tell, unless we are really just living in Sheol or purgatory ever since, and we didn't notice the shift. But it could be that we got the math wrong, is that the Mayans were on a lunar calendar, in which case 2012 would be the equivalent of something in the near future. But yeah, the way that it coincides in terms of the things that they were doing, I think that it was 2012 that CERN had first discovered what they describe as the God particle. So they've been up and running since 2008. And as you were saying the other day, the Mandela effect actually preceded the first time that they had fired up CERN, which is either predictive programming or it's something that leaked not only from another reality into our reality, but also transited time into a different time, is that it preceded itself in its own firing. I just pulled up an image of that Rick Remender's Black Science, because they talk about this a lot, where the universe is an onion, and they create a device that will pierce through a layer of the onion into another. And every time they do so, like you were saying, it begins to overlay each reality and brings things into other methods. And the deeper they go, the harder it is to go back, and the more confused things become. Like, it's a really powerful book for anybody who's a fan of Rick Remender or comic books regardless. And like you were saying, the one thing that I consider is that I have the experience of having clearly remembered to this day of having been on trolleys in Denver, which just is not possible. And so that's an anecdotal personal experience that could be Mandela effect, or maybe I was just a wacky kid, which I definitely am going to admit I was. But when you're looking at media, it is almost as easy just to argumentatively consider the idea that media could change. Maybe the original Star Wars, it did say, Luke, I am your father. And then some kind of overdub edit came out. It's like, for example, nobody talks about Mandela Effect when they talk about the original Jabba the Hutt. And Jabba the Hutt used to be a fat Scotsman, right? Like if you had Star Wars on Betamax, or maybe even some early copies of VHS, or if you saw it in theaters when it released, Jabba the Hutt wasn't a big slug puppet. He was like a fat Scotsman. Do you remember this?
Yeah, but there's also for Star Wars they have the Mandela Effect to see 3PO's leg, if you remember, because his shin is silver on one leg, but
Yeah.
that switched, right? And me having painted figures, that's something I definitely noticed, you know. And I brought up Hocus Pocus 2 on the last one, remember? So the lady, the way she talks with her mouth to the side on the left side in the first movie.
Like she had a stroke or something, yeah.
And she said it hurt her mouth so bad that she talked with the right side, and they felt that it was such a minute difference that no one would notice it. And right away, when we're watching the movie, I called it out. And my daughter was like, how did you notice that? She said that in an interview. I said, oh, you already watched all that stuff already? And she was like, yeah, but how did you catch that? It's all because I know that when she talked, it was on the left side. And now all of a sudden in this movie, she's talking and her mouth's on the right side.
Yeah. So that's another good example, is that isn't anything that somebody claims to be a Mandela effect. There is an explanation as to why that is.
But
However,
I'm saying that with the attention to detail, right? So how do you
yeah,
say that a person's memories are not their memories, right? So,
yeah,
for
you're able to
instance,
confirm that your memories were correct in this regard, and it's corroborated. Whereas with the Mandela effect, it's just going to tell you that your memories failed you. You've already proven the legitimacy of your memories. And so when it comes to anything else, say Nelson Mandela himself dying in prison in the 70s versus living to the ripe old age of whatever, whenever, then the claim is always that it's your memory that's failed you. Whereas you're able to prove via Hocus Pocus 2 that your memory is just fine. You had that attention to detail to be able to notice these things.
so remember I was talking to you about it before, and you sent me the video of the guy putting the Bernstein Bears. So it's the Bernstein, that's how it normally is, and now it's spelled stain, like a
Yeah.
stain on the carpet. And he takes the book, and it was the one about the crazy eights, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, which is tied to the rings of Saturn, Chronos, time, right? And in the whole book, he's always looking at his watch. Oh, I gotta be on time. I gotta be on time. How funny that the train has I can't remember what's on it, but there's a symbol on it that represents time.
Yeah.
Also and it's called the Crazy Eight. But when he's putting it in the room and he's using a flip phone, right? Or no, it's the room itself, right? He
Yeah,
just
he
puts it
has
in
the
the
book in his
room,
hands. We definitely
and
need to get into the flip phone too, but let me see if I can find that video. He has the Bernstein Bears book in his hands, and even if it is a hoax, then this is the most clever editing that I've ever seen, because he'll walk through a door jam between one room and the other, and it changes from Bernstein to Bernstein, and it just so minutely perfectly changes those particular letters that it's even if it is a hoax, my hat's off to the person who was able to like fashion that. Like I love a good hoax when they do like a good job with it.
if it is real, dude, the way I see it is he's walking through some kind of portal or some kind of opening that not necessarily like a dimensional portal, but you know what I mean, like
A
kind of
rip, a simple rip.
yeah, that's just putting energy in that makes it the other universe, right? It's not like he can go to another universe by stepping into the room. It's just that he's getting a glimpse of a piece of the other universe with something that was affected.
Right. Like one room is it's like a riptide of like time and circumstance or something, and he's passing through these things. And that doesn't sound like completely off the mark of the way that a lot of these quantum physicists and engineers that work with CERN talk about reality, is that you have like a tide pool over here and then you have a riptide over there. CERN itself kind of taking a tide pool and creating a riptide with it. Trying to see if I have that video. I got Darth Maul bench pressing. That's awesome.
I bet it is.
Got some honky chonkos outside. Yeah. I don't know.
But while Adam's looking that up, I'm gonna kind of mention the flip phone thing that we were kind of talking about. There's a guy, and he has a few accounts on social media. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. And he still has a flip phone, and he'll take a camera that he's holding, and he's showing you things that are affected by the Mandela effect. But when he takes a picture of it with the flip phone, and he shows you the picture, it's what the Mandela effect is. So, like for this instance, if the book says Bernstein bears with the stain part with the AI, he takes a picture of it, and now it says Bernstein with the EI. And he's done this with many things that are all Mandela effects. Even like the Britney Spears video, you can take a picture of it, and it'll show the way that most people like myself remember it. So right now, since they fired after 3 year hiatus and they had to reconstruct it, make it bigger, they fired it again. The first Mandela effect that came out was the Britney Spears "Oops, I Did It Again" video. Now she's wearing a white button-up shirt with a gray sweater, but the part that everyone is disagreeing on at the moment is, and the way I remember it, is she had a plaid skirt on. But if you watch the video now, she's wearing a black skirt. And she's part of the MK Ultra. I truly believe that, with being the Disney kids, and there's been emails leaked between her lawyer and her mother, on top of her weird posts, her psychotic breakdown. It
Yeah.
honestly makes me feel like the Black Mirror episode with Miley Cyrus, right? I don't know if you had seen it yet or not, Adam, but I know I told you about it. Remember, that's the one where they're using the Nine Inch Nails songs, and I freaking love that because I
Yeah.
love Nine Inch Nails. Oh yeah, there it is. See you on time.
One that really blew me away. I mean, there are so many deep dives that you could go down Britney Spears with, but when you had mentioned that she's no longer wearing a plaid dress, that image was just bored into our brain as like born in the 80s, 90s kids. It zooms in eventually. The image gets clearer so you could see it. This would be such clever video editing if they were able, like that's amazing to me right there.
Yep, but I'm trying to zoom in on it because I swear the bus number's 88, but it's
Yeah.
hard because it's too blurry.
Hmm. So that one is just good, wholesome fun. Like I love a lot of these subjects because it's just fun rabbit holes to get down, like you have a bunch of wizards that live underground at CERN. Like all of the people, they live in campuses underground. They do all of their work underground. And these are the most agnostic, atheist, non-religious people whatsoever. And yet the full realization of what it is that they are researching is trying to prove something, what they call the God particle. So it's like how fantastical, like dark arts kind of an attempt are you doing to work within science? And yet the whole reason that you're inspired to do so is like a very religious concept. I
About
just
the
find the whole
part
thing like just absolutely fascinating.
about the part that they built it on the proverbial part where Mikael cast Gadriel, or who people believe is Satan, down to the proverbial gates of hell, right? They built CERN right on top of that spot. Now, why
Yeah.
is that? I mean, everything there is symbolic. So, the last one we recorded that didn't have audio, we talked about the Swiss Alps as well, because, I mean, we're talking the same area here. And the Swiss Alps was the celebration of the tunnel, the largest man made tunnel through a mountain chain. And when they unveiled the tunnel, it was a very occult, very Luciferian uh, type of assembly, and all the world leaders were present there. And again, like I said in the last one that wasn't able to be put out, is that that's just not my view on it. I mean, preferably, I'd want people to watch it and see what their take is on it. So in the beginning, there's people walking, and they're like orange jumpsuits. They look like construction workers, and they're walking like zombies. So it's almost like Revelations, when there's no more room in hell, the dead begin to rise and walk again. That's what it looks like. So they're walking, and a portal opens up on a screen that's a circular screen, a spherical screen, and it's a bunch of eyeballs. And then the people start getting sucked into it. And I can't remember how many people were in it, but they say that was representation of the workers that died during the construction of the Swiss Alps. And I mean, through this ceremony, you have this goat-headed like Baphomet come down. He mates with a woman with all these people in white dancing around him, almost like very druidic type of ceremony. And then this woman gives birth to a freaking crazy cherub with a giant head. It's like a caricature. They have like a freaking ceramic head on this person who's flying around like a cherub, almost like the birth of who people call Lucifer, but in Hebrew and the book of Enoch tells us that this one, because there's many shaitans, many satans in the scripture, and through English translation that's been lost, but the one that was in the Garden of Eden who deceived Eve, the one who was in the Garden of Gethsemane who tried to corrupt the Messiah, and the one who was on Mount Hermon who convinced the angels to mate with mortal women is God Rial. See, and I mean, look at these pictures.
I had never seen this before. Like, I'd seen the, what was it, the Olympic opening where they had like a bunch of astronauts and like cherubs and babies and stuff. Like, this is nightmare fuel, bro.
So, and
Is
Obama
that
was
like a
our president at the time
bunny?
of this.
It's
And
like
he
a
was
bunny
there.
goat. Oh, yeah, because, you know, what's not hot about a bunch of like the village people? They got the village people and shit. Awesome. Good Lord.
And you see what I mean.
And
Look,
then,
right
yeah,
there's the
clearly
Baphomet right there.
Baphomet representation, like, that is wild.
Or Pan, you know.
Holy God. Like, where does that get fun? Everybody is freaking out about the shaman at January 6th. It's like, why doesn't anybody talk about this?
I
Good
know, and
Lord.
then you saw it in, what was it, England, where they're worshiping Baal with the Scarlet Woman, right? The golden calf. It
Yeah.
has the golden bull. What ceremony was that? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
The one with the golden calf, I feel like that might have been one of the Olympic Games opening ceremonies, but there have just been so many weird ceremonies that they have. It's really hard to keep up with all of that.
Well,
Like,
so she's wearing a white dress, but they used the lights to illuminate it, and they turned her dress scarlet, like the Scarlet Woman, right? Which is the
right,
representation of the whore of Babylon.
right. Do you
Okay,
suppose that
so
that's what the Scarlet Witch and Marvel and is all about?
that is where she came from,
Yeah.
actually. And the one who called the Scarlet Woman was Aleister Crowley.
Mm.
And so, I mean, a little bit into Aleister Crowley, since we're on the subject, and I was kind of talking to you about this, Adam, is that he believed that nursery rhymes held occult secrets and occult knowledges, right? We were talking about the old Mother Hubbard one, right?
Yeah.
Actually being the story of Isis and Osiris, but there is the story how Osiris was murdered by his brother Set. But according to Aleister Crowley, this is when Typhon killed Osiris and dismembered him, and Isis couldn't find the phallus, which is
Who
the
was
bone.
Typhon?
Huh?
Typhon? You said Typhon actually murdered him? Who was Typhon?
Typhon is, I think he's a Greek entity, like one of the Titans. I'm not 100% sure on this,
It
but
sounds
it's
like
the
Typhon
one.
that would be associated with.
He's the one that is associated to the power that gave the peace sign to Winston Churchill. Remember?
Yeah.
Aleister Crowley told him that it would invoke the power of the Nords, which is the
Youngest son
power
of
of
Gaia
Typhon.
and Tartarus, so Gaia Earth, and the father of Tartarus of the Netherworld. He is described as a grisly monster with 100 dragon's heads who was conquered and cast into the underworld by Zeus. Interesting.
Yeah, so he gave Winston Churchill the peace sign because it was drawing the powers of Typhon and calling the Nords. Remember, we were trying to remember what the word was the last time, but that's what it is, to battle the Nazis, because the Nazis were using occult symbolism and opening doors and bringing stuff into this world as well.
Yeah.
And if you want, Adam, we can talk about this in here too, in Tartaria, like we were the other day over the phone.
We could definitely start with okay, so we started off with old what's his face went up on the windswept mountain with a young boy and did like some very
Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley. You can't really talk about CERN without talking about Aleister Crowley. And Aleister Crowley, I'm just going to go for like a quick wiki here.
The
Just to make
temper,
sure that justice. Aleister Crowley was a wizard. He was like a self-described magus. Born the 12th of October, 1875, died the 1st of December, 1947. He was an English occultist, ceremonial magician, poet, painter, novelist, and mountaineer. He founded the religion of Thelema, identifying himself as the prophet entrusted to guiding humanity into the Aeon of Horus in the early 20th century. This guy was very influential, and he was so influential that you will see practices in symbology of works of his that he founded himself within the very opening CERN ceremony. So the fact that these people are agnostic, atheist, whatever, like the only true God is science, which I'm not necessarily against. It's just that at the end of the day, they are always going to fall back on the ulterior arts and motives per Aleister Crowley, and embed those in whatever practices that they do, like playing with the very makeup of reality and shit. That's where it gets weird to me.
Not all of them are like that. And remember, we were talking about this, Adam. A lot of these people in the elite, they worship specific angels, the fallen ones. So, for instance, you have Vlad Tepes, who claimed to be from the angel Raphael. And I was telling Adam that I believe it's because, you know, through the book of Enoch, what it says is that anybody with a lighter complexion skin, and I mean, you got to look at it this way. When they came down from Mount Hermon, they were mixing their blood with everything. And science and faith agree on one thing. Not every person on the earth agrees on one thing, but science and faith agree on one thing. The first person comes from that fertile crest, which what color are the people from that area? So if we have lighter complexion, according to the book of Enoch, that was from the angels mixing their DNA with us. One of the traits for people that are Raphaelian from the angel Raphael was the red hair and pale skin. That's why I told Adam that I believe if he could fit in the category. So you have Prince Charles, who claimed that he can prove he's related to Vlad Tepes. So right there you have the British royalty, and this is why I wanted to get into Putin and Tartaria as well, right? Is that the British royals are German, because I wanted to get into the whole neo-Nazi thing as well, you know, because there's a lot of things in our world, because the Nazis, you have to understand, they were into the occult. You had, what was the pyramid called? 721 or something like that, that they said was in Antarctica, which inspired Operation High Jump. And we went down there to find out about the Nazi base, but instead, supposedly we found the firmament, we found land beyond the ice wall that we couldn't get to.
Earth.
We shot missiles into it, which I believe were nukes. We also crashed military planes into it. What was supposed to be a 2-year project only turned to weeks long. Admiral Byrd comes back to the U.S., talks about what he's seen, and dies mysteriously 2 weeks later. You have projects like Operation Dominic, Operation Fishbowl, all of these things that ensue afterwards, which the flat earth thing is a whole nother subject. I just wanted to get into the ties to the Nazis, okay, and their occult symbolism inspiring our world, because shortly after Operation High Jump and Operation Paperclip, what happened? But we took all the Nazi scientists to evade war crimes, and we put them here with fake American, German identities, and allowed them to continue their work here for the United States. And who? Von Braun becomes the #1 guy for NASA, you know. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up, Adam and I were talking about this, is how we believe that a lot of the elites in our countries, in the royal families, even the Ukraine war has to do with the neo-Nazis, and that we're starting to think, and I mean, Adam, forgive me if I'm saying this, but I think we're both on the same page with this, that Putin, maybe he's not exactly from that, but his people are, and the information he's releasing are from the last reset, Tartaria, those people that battled the elites that are today, that took over the system.
They were like a tertiary empire, and so there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, full disclosure, Delaine and I are not carrying water for Nazi ideology or whatever. We are simply reporting on it as much as we are reporting what is in the Book of Enoch, and in terms of like a given people's traits and such, as to what is in the since redacted Book of Enoch. And so it is absolutely true that basically the entire Nazi front, from the SS to Himmler, like people talk about Hitler today, but Himmler was the neck that turned the head of Hitler, and that guy was an absolute spook. Like this guy was into the occult as the day is long. Actually, when he had first met Hitler during, I think that it was one of the first German socialist parties or whatever, he approached Hitler and told him, he's like, you are a man of great power. To activate this power, you must go back to the town of your birthplace and dig in the ground until you find a mandrake root and put it on your body for as long as you can. And so there's a picture that has been removed from the internet of old sweetheart Hitler walking around with this infant-sized mandrake root that's shaped like an infant hung from a chain around his neck at the behest of Himmler. This is the guy that they were dosing up on all kinds of amphetamines and whatnot.
Would you say it's like the ludicrous necklace in that video stands up when he's wearing the midget on his necklace?
Exactly, dude. And man, when I saw that documentary and I saw that photo, like I lost my marbles. That was the most adorable thing I saw ever. Like the idea is that you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because if you do, as you could see on the screen, like what do you associate with Nazism? The swastika, right? The swastika is one of the most potent and powerful kinds of symbols across every basic culture that you could ever possibly think of. It is shared between ancient India, ancient Persia, all the way over into the Western Hemisphere from Maya, the Olmec, the Toltec, a lot of like northern tribes like the Navajo, the Hopi. And so the fact is that the Nazi regime was so associated and so invested in the occult that they were able to take such a previously beautiful symbol of invoking power, love, creation, whatever, and then turning it on its head into one of the most evil symbols ever imaginable. It kind of makes me think of Chuck Parson at RimCAD, is that in all of his structural sculptures that he makes, he hides an upside down cross in. Yeah. And he does that in a beautiful work of art to denature the negative association with simple vertices. I always thought that was a really cool endeavor that he had done it, and I never did get to have the conversation with him as to whether or not he was including that on account of the way that we associate symbols as a negative connotation. Like, so this symbol right here, as you were talking about, you got onto Ukraine and the neo-Nazi fronts that are there. They
as I may add real quick to the symbol, because before we move further into the Nazi thing, the symbol actually comes from the North Star. And it's funny you mentioned the northern tribes, because if you look at Polaris and through all 4 seasons with the Big Dipper right in the center, it forms a swastika throughout the year. That's where that symbol came from, which is why there's a lot of talk about there's something going on at that North Pole, and I mean actual north. And there's a video that leaked from the Russians. I don't know if you've seen it, Adam, of that hole where they're saying that it is in the North Pole. You know, the hole that leads to Argata with the Brillia, the Brill people, right? Not the Brill Society of Nazi Germany, who claim to be descendants of the Brillia, the actual Brillia, who were supposed to be light beings, really light hair, light complexion, so light that they looked almost like they're made of light, and they were superior and far advanced. Remember, this is why the Nazis went down to Antarctica in the first place. With the rumors of an underground civilization in Argata. That's the name of the place. It's written about by I can't remember who wrote about it, but Isaac Newton even believed in it.
Yeah. Isaac Newton was one of the registered magus, along with Sitting Bull, Moses. I can't remember like a lot of the other examples. Probably Thoth.
And Hermes Trismegistus. So
yeah.
You know, getting into that, Edgar Casey said that Hermes Trismegistus' last reincarnation was the Messiah Jesus, right, as a sage-like character. So when Adam's talking about the maguses, to me, they're like sage-like characters and the archetypes, okay? And the reason why I call them sages is because they're like a magician who came here to give us the ultimate knowledge. So like, just like Hermes or Mercury, right? And that's why his name is Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus, thrice greatest, right? He's Hermes, Mercury, Thoth. He's mind, body, and spirit all in one. And the thing about Hermes and Mercury is they use the Axi Mundi to transport between the realm of earth and gods, right? And if you look this up, it's like the tree of life, right, Adam? It's like
Yeah.
in a bubble, like the firmament of the flat Earth, and it has a root system that goes down as above, so below. But they would use this to commune with the gods and bring information back to the realities.
It was Richard Byrd was the American pilot that spearheaded Operation High Jump.
Yep,
He was
Admiral Byrd.
that upon returning reported under oath that when he had reached Antarctica, as he was flying in relation to the horizon began to change in a way almost as though he wasn't flying around a sphere or even a plane, but a cornucopia, and that the horizon eventually opened up into the opening of a cornucopia, i.e., hollow Earth, leading to the what did you say? Not the Vedic, but the
Argata.
Argata. Yeah, yeah. And
Brilliant.
that guy swore about it until the day he died, and he was like a
But
very decorated general within the Air Force.
he's the first guy to fly over Antarctica. He is also the real life Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
He excavated a lot of areas and stuff, and a lot of countries brought him in to help them form battle plans. So he's a very trusted person. He's also a high level Freemason. And while he said what he did on television, I think it was in 1952, he died shortly after NASA was founded, right? And I mean, that's a whole nother story for another subject. But the point being is that there have been a neo-Nazi presence within our world since World War II. And I don't even know if we can just feel safe to call them Nazis. It's just some kind of another elite program. Because, see, the royal family, they're not English. They're German immigrants who took over there. And so you have to look at the royal family as they're part of this. And with Tartaria, it was part of Russia and North Korea. There's still some of the architecture standing. There's a building, they say, that's in North Korea that no one else is allowed in except for Kim Jong-un and his family, right? And it's said to have very out of this world architecture in it that we've never even known. And you got to understand the ancient people used vibration and everything to create energies that would bless or make something feel a certain way. So while we were on the subject of Aleister Crowley and the what's his temple called? The Order of the, I can't think of it right now.
Order of the Rising Sun, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But in every room, every window, every part of that building, they use sacred geometry. Everything was measured a certain way to harness certain energies, just like in feng shui, right? Because they were using every room, everything in that whole building was used for seances and ceremonies. So to harness this energy, he had everything built in such a mathematical way that it enhanced the energies. You know, and we talked about this in that last episode about the cathedrals and the temples, right, where they're using vibrational frequencies as healing temples, healing centers. So, I mean, there's a lot of things out there that people would see as crazy pseudoscience, right? That's what a lot of it gets called because they don't want to invest in the things that aren't going to make them a lot of money, right? They don't care about the things that don't make sense necessarily. They care about what's going to make them money.
Yeah. Trying to find a particular image as long as, well, I just wish that I had a better way to zoom in on these images. Is that the one? Yeah, so as you had seen previously in the image I was showing, let me get back to screen share here. The Black Sun and the ideology of the occult prevalent in Nazi Germany. These were the things that U.S. soldiers would see on fallen SS members and such. And it is what we are seeing across the board in Ukraine today, is that so many of these people on the front lines in Ukraine are wearing this insignia. If it loads, if you could see it there, you clearly see the Black Sun insignia on his regalia, right?
Yeah.
And so here we are, the mythological background of National Socialism, that is the symbol of the Black Sun. And then here you see on so many of the Ukrainians on the front lines, the people that we are funding, that we're sending billions of dollars to, are wearing that. So it's almost like a reverse Project Paperclip. Um, the book Black Sun sheds new light on the sources of Nazi ideology by examining its occult roots in the words of myths, symbols, and fantasies. It traces the development from the writings of various mystics in the early 20th century, which located the original home of the Germanic people in sunken continents such as Thule, Atlantis, and propagated the mythology of a superior Nordic race whose heroes fought the forces of moral decadence and racial impurity. So they were working with things that you could back up in ancient literature and such. It's just that they went too hard in the paint and goofed it all up. I mean, the whole idea that you're going to say that German nationals are more pure than any other is you're saying like the crown itself of England, like King Charles and Queen Elizabeth and everything, and the very people that believe that they are of a pure master race, it's like, I'm not really seeing it, bro. It seems like you guys are kind of recessive and had a little bit too much fun with your family members. If anybody has seen House of the Dragon, it's about that level of incest.
So with Hitler creating eugenics, right? And eugenics is the
He didn't
science.
create eugenics. Eugenics was created in the U.S. Anyways, go ahead.
So yeah, he uses eugenics to prove the Aryan race, right? And eugenics is the science of genealogy and tracing back your bloodlines and your history and our genetic makeup. Through that, though, like I said, according to the Book of Enoch, when Noah is born, and Enoch is his grandfather, he described him as having lighter hair, lighter eye, or lighter skin, and his eyes look like that of the sun's on fire. Um, he said he looked like that of the child of the angels. At which point, because the Book of Enoch it talks about the Nephilim, okay, and at first the Nephilim were giants. They were monsters. People tried to feed them and house them, but they had an insatiable hunger, so they began to eat us. So think more like Attack on Titan, you know. And people were crying out to the Father according to the scriptures, and they said, "How long will we die and suffer before you help us?" At which point Noah was told that there was going to be a flood, right? The flood, and this is a misconception, right? We're told that the flood was for our sins. No, the flood was for the sins of the angels. So there's a lot of these things like mountaintops and stuff showing up that look like tree trunks, because according to that scripture, God sent the archangels down and they chopped all the giant trees down in this world to ensure that all these abominations would drown when he would flood it. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because, like I said, at the point where Noah was born and Enoch compares him to that of the child of the angels, he's basically telling you that now they look like us, just different complexion, different hair colors, right? Because we've been being mixed. And as I was saying earlier, if we all came from the Fertile Crescent, if we are from the Homo sapiens, okay, and I actually just saw it on Bob Lazar the other day. You know who I'm talking about, Bob Lazar.
Oh yeah, the alien guy that was working in Area 51 with secret alien technology and stuff.
Yeah, so in Element 115 and the hand thing that could read your bone density and stuff like that, all that stuff that he whistleblowed on. He was talking about the race that they're working with in 1979. There was a disagreement and they left. It said that they would come back again. That's when the project halted. But he said these beings said that the human race has been genetically modified at least 65 times since our creation. Now, all I'm saying is that everything has synchronicities. And in the Book of Enoch, if lighter complexion people came from the angels mixing with us, right, then you have to understand that essentially, if what Hitler was saying, the blonde hair, blue eyes, lighter skin, right, these are how the Brillia people are described, basically, in a sense. Um, what he's basically saying is, yes, they're superior in their genealogy. What I believe is because they're not total humans. Because of the mixing with angel DNA, of course they're going to be better than a human. They have angel DNA in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like us. I mean, you and I are lighter complexion people. That means that we have that mixing in our genealogy.
So this is kind of an aside when you said that when Hitler created the eugenics program, and it sort of ties into a lot of what you were saying, is that if my screen is sharing right now, you could see that in America, the eugenics movement began in the 1900s with the work of Charles Davenport, who was a well-known leader of the American eugenics effort. Also known as the father of American eugenics movement, Davenport was a biologist who conducted early studies on hereditary in animals and shifted his focus to humans. Now, I will have to deep dive here, and I won't be able to do it on the web browser I'm using right now, but I am pretty sure that the Gates family was sired by the Davenports, and that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation used to de facto be called the eugenics program of the modern century or something like that. And so it's interesting because everybody wants to, again, throw the baby out with the bathwater and not pay attention to history and everything and just lay all of the world's evils at the feet of the Nazis. The Nazis were evil cunts. Don't get me wrong. Like, evil fucks down to the man if you were in the SS and not just one of the poor bastards following orders. However, historically, if you look at it, the Nazis had a very interesting relationship with the indigenous of the Western Hemisphere. If they were watching like Hollywood reels of cowboys versus Indians, the Nazi ideology would side with the Indians to a man. Like they loved the concept of the purity of their culture and the purity of their technology and the way that they were so well bonded to the land. And now all of our history for you and I is taught that the Nazis were the most evil because they committed genocide against the Jews, the gypsies, the gays, I don't think they really had an issue with black people necessarily. Not that they really enlisted them either, but it's give and take. And if you look at what the Nazis did in the context of them having learned from us in the Wild Wild West, we were the ones to first commit genocide against the Native Americans. If you look at the culling of the buffalo alone, we didn't do that for any other reason than to remove the indigenous population's food source. And then we just took everything pall mall from there. Like that is the kind of genocide that the Nazis learned from, and they picked up eugenics from Charles Davenport.
Yeah. So, I mean, getting back to this and the Tartaria, right? For those of you that don't know what Tartaria is, I mean, I don't know how it's been all over. Putin basically, according to what's going around, is that Putin's the one who put out this information. And I mean, it stands to reason because Tartaria was in Russia. Um, he was saying that the world's been lied to for so long. This information's been hidden for so long. So he released all this information. So if you're seeing these pictures of Tartaria, yeah, it's a very advanced civilization beyond its time. Before, this is in the 1800s, right? This was at that first fair. I think it's in 1900, 1910 or something.
1908. Architect
19.
Ernest Flagg completed the Singer Building in Lower Manhattan, a Beaux Arts showstopper. Yeah, so since 1908, Ernest Flagg was very interested in Tartaria.
So, okay, so they have giants in Tartaria, right? There's multiple pictures of giants there. Men, women, the brothers, right? They're like almost 9 feet tall. And they have advanced technology. All the things where you see the guy riding the bike that has a circle around it, a sphere, or the people that are riding propeller bikes, right? That have the wings that flap and stuff. All that stuff came from Tartaria. And Tartaria was helped founded by Nikola Tesla. That's why they were so advanced. And they used frequency, energy. They harnessed the world grid of energy as I believe that the ancients did at one time. Now, Adam and I have talked about this, and I'm sure if you understand the way things work, then you'll understand what I'm saying. But a generational belief takes 10 years to wipe out. So, I mean, it takes a full 10 years before you can change any kind of generational belief. There was a guy in Japan, and he wanted to sell coffee in the 80s. Now, Japan only drank tea. How do you sell something there that the people don't even care about? So he started making toys, coffee related toys. He started making cartoons, little jingles that they'd put on the radio. And in 10 years' time, coffee was the number one drink in Japan over tea. And it took 10 years, and he understood that, and that's how he broke them. And if he understands that as a businessman, What makes you think that the governments of the world don't understand that? And then when I say the Great Reset, that's what I'm talking about. So after they wiped out the Tartarian world and the people that were behind it of the old world, it takes 10 years to change the generational beliefs and come into the world that we exist in now, that was taken over by the elites that are here now.
I'm trying to remember the name of who is the most famous propaganda. Oh, what is that guy's name? Yeah, he basically was the one that said that smoking is safe for pregnant women. He was the one that would like got everybody all swept up in buying war bonds and stuff. And then you see war bonds on coffee packages. You see buy war
Wasn't that Truman?
tunes.
Is that who you're
What's that?
talking about? Truman?
No, no, no. He's more obscure than that, and he is one of the most forgotten figures in history. Um, but he really is responsible for the unseen hand that influences culture in such a way that you would never even know why you feel inclined to buy the new iPhone 13 or why you feel like you see a car commercial and you go out and buy a car. It was the architect that was basically able to create that. Oh man, it's on the tip of my tongue and it's going to drive me crazy. Google, don't fail me now.
Oh,
Uh,
but Tartaria also had the priest with all the electric symbols on their robes. I don't know if you've seen those pictures. Have you?
Pictures of what?
The priests that have the electrical symbols on their robes.
Yes, yes, I have seen that. Yeah.
Because
Um,
the idea is, right, the cities are computer grids or a circuit board, and there's an idea that yes, if there was something above us, right, alien, angels, whatever, they're looking down on us, and like a city like New York, it looks like a motherboard.
yeah. See if I can find this and then I'll look that one up. They're talking about George Creel, but it wasn't Creel. It was his ward that was really all about it. Creel had a much more kind of inert sort of propaganda, whereas the guy that I'm talking about is he is the founder of the way that we receive all information. Like all information is biased to such an extent that as you being the audience of whatever information presented, this guy's architecture, the format that he laid out, is that you being party to even so much as witnessing it means that you are going to be party to defending it. And this is what interests me about the concept of flat Earth, is that nobody really has a dog in the fight of flat Earth or not. It's just that they have an emotional response whenever it's brought up. I think that there are beneficial aspects to considering that the earth is flat, is that, like you say, you could change culture in 5 years' time. So when they say that, well, Galileo and ancient Greece proved that the earth is round, and it's like, you can't confirm that. It could just be a case of that 5 years ago, they started telling everybody that 5,000 years ago, we confirmed that the earth is round. There is no valid information there. It's just saying like, well, Galileo was real. And it's like, how do you confirm that? Okay, like we have records of it, but whenever you got interested in the subject, might have just been 5 years ago when they decided to gin this up. And I don't have a dog in that fight, and I'm not saying one way or the other. All I'm saying is that unless you're able to do the science yourself and prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that you know what you're looking at, then it doesn't really bear getting into an argument with somebody. Like I think that flat earthers and round earthers have more in common than any other class war that they're, or not class war, but race war that they're trying to create between people as they just lord over us in the top versus bottom fight.
So the only reason, and I agree with you, Adam, and I've said this before in the podcast, like when I talk about flat Earth, it's not to convince anybody of it. It doesn't really matter. It won't change the way you live your life. It's not going to change you if it's round or flat. It's only important when it comes to truth. But I believe the more you give into this matrix and the ideas of this matrix, the more you get trapped in it, right? It's like it's reaffirming the programming in you. So something I wanted to talk about, because we mentioned it last time, but it hadn't recorded. A misconception of this realm is that the brain is your consciousness. That's wrong. The brain is a receiver for your consciousness, which doesn't exist in this realm. And this is where you and I got into the Platonic solids and sacred geometry, right? Because sacred geometry proves that you have platonic solids. They exist in the third dimension. When you break these platonic solids down, and I want to bring this up because it ties back full circle to your onion and the everything bagel from
Yeah,
everything everywhere all at
such a
once.
good example.
So um, when you get the platonic solids and you map them out like a grid, they create what's called the Merkaba or Metatron's cube. And the Merkaba is also something that your body produces like a toroidal field. And we mentioned this last time. It's like an AT field in Evangelion, right? How they have the AT field. So you have a bubble, and when people enter it, you feel it. But it's because from yourself, your center, you're producing an energy that is spiral energy, like the Fibonacci sequence, like all living things, and it generates a bubble around you. This is how consciousness exists in a realm that has no measurement to measure amongst other things to move around in this plane of existence. Now, the earth has it. It's what I like to believe is a firmament. Some people might call it the atmosphere, whatever you want to call it. It's the same thing. It's a Merkaba. It is an energy that comes out of us. So the swastika is a representation of the Merkaba, with it being the broken cross, and it's the way that the arms are. It's supposed to be rotating spiral. It's energy. It's representation of the Fibonacci sequence.
Well, it's interesting the way that you framed it when you were saying that it's important not to invest in this reality too much because it kind of harkens back to us talking about CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, tearing holes in reality, and Mandela effects. Is that despite what's being introduced, it might not be on us to just say that, well, this isn't what came before, because that's going to lead to kind of harkens back to Nazi ideology and everything is saying that, oh, yeah, this guy over here, he was from universe B and I'm from universe A. And so we're going to have like a race calling whatever. Um, that there aren't aspects of anything that we should hang on to. Like, I don't have any issue with what's happening at CERN if it do create Mandela effects or whatever. That is just simply the outcome and the new reality that we always have to be able to adopt and adapt.
So going back to the Merkaba, right? Um, when I said the onion and the everything bagel, okay, because the everything bagel and everything, a spoiler alert, at the end of the movie, she creates a black hole. She puts everything on it. That's why they call it the everything bagel. And it's a Merkaba. Merkaba can either produce energy or they can suck energy into it, right? Because there's an antithesis of everything. If you have a matter me, then you also have an antimatter me, right? As above, so below. There's the duality of everything. So with the everything bagel, it was a Merkaba, and she used it to destroy all life rather than create it, right? Because Merkaba, it's like the presence of energy. Like the Hindu, they called it Brahma, right? That he breathed existence or creation into existence with the word Om. And the monks, they all chant with the Om. It's 432 hertz. It's not one of the solfeggio frequencies, but it is so powerful and has such healing properties that most people consider it amongst the solfeggio frequencies, which there are 9, which said they were the angelic sounds given to us by the angels, and they had healing properties. In around the 1940s, mid to late 1940s, the Rockefellers had understood that if you took the hertz of music and you changed it either up or down from the healing hertz, what it
Mm.
would do is it actually made us more susceptible, more docile, um, and more susceptible to subliminal messaging. And it made us have more of a negative energy, right? We didn't have now the healing of our blood. We don't have the healing of our minds. None of that with the music that exists in the Western world anymore. All classical music used the solfeggio frequencies, right? This is why when you hear a piece by Mozart and you're just taken away by it, right? Most people would be. You hear something like a violin solo or something, right? It just gets you in the heart, right? That's why it's in the Queen of the Damned. That's what Lestat did, is play the violin. Remember, it woke up the queen because it
Yeah.
was the most beautiful sound she ever heard. This is coming from solfeggio frequencies, right? Vibration and frequencies have a lot to do with our essence and our creation.
There's another term that what you're talking about, and it's the hertz of music, the HERTZ. And it was the natural hertz that live actual music played on actual instruments naturally resonates with. But since we've gone with technology and digital and everything, like all radio broadcasts were in not that hertz. So,
And they put crystals in your radio to amplify that negative energy.
yeah, or they put them in there because that was like the natural medium to be able to play it. I can't remember if it's 528 hertz, or I feel like it's more of a prime number. Like 528 could be a prime.
528 is one of the solfeggio frequencies.
Okay, so that's one of the good ones. Yeah. 432 and 528 apparently are like the natural resonance of hertz that you will listen to when it comes to like a natural instrument. Like if you have an acoustic guitar, that is the hertz that that instrument produces.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. I mean, we've really just kind of gone all the way around the horn in terms of talking about starting off with CERN and then talking about the high technology of that, and then hearkening back to other modiles of technology and the way that they are imbued and executed and transmitted. Um, yeah, what you think? What you got?
No, I like it, man. That's why we're called Esoterror. We wanted to get into esoteric symbolism and things behind all of these. So, I mean, I guess going back to the pyramids and energy and frequency, since we're still on the subject. So, remember, I was telling you the other day, I was listening to a podcast with One on One, right, with Juan Ayala. And he was saying how, and shout out Juan, he was saying how he was going to Egypt at the beginning of 2023. And the guy he's going on a tour with, they did a private tour, and inside the pyramids, and I didn't know this before, you're not allowed to chant in there because it has vibrational frequencies, and they're not wanting you to harness this. So I asked Adam a question the other day, but I'll get to that. So this guy, they went in a private group, and in the king's chamber, in that granite tomb, or what they believed was a tomb, he laid inside of it when the people started humming, because mind you, you're not allowed to chant, so they were humming. However they were. He got inside there, and he said the energy was overwhelming. It was so immense that he had to crawl out of the box, and it was too much for him. It just felt like he was vibrating apart, he said, just from these people in there humming. So like I asked Adam, if you're not allowed to chant in there, why is that? What powers are you harnessing in there? What does it really hold? What is it really doing that they don't want you to know? You know, because they say they were for the pharaohs, okay? But
Yeah.
clearly we found that they're not burial chambers. And the more that people have looked into it, we're coming to find there's some kind of energy housing. We still don't understand the full effects of how they were manipulating the energy or using it, but I brought it up in the last one about the Hathor Temple being a healing center, right? And I think it's Cliff Dennings. Shout out Cliff. Is the guy who was saying that you don't want to do other substances before going in there because then you're not going to feel the same way, right? If these were generated to balance out your spiritual centers and your energies, if you go in there high, drunk, whatever, you know, your vibration, your energy, it's already different entering that temple, so you're not going to feel the full healing experience.
So this is John Anthony West, rest in peace. That guy died back in 2018, and he was one of the last international tour guides that was allowed in all of the major pyramids and everything. And it's funny because when you say that they don't allow chanting or humming or singing or anything within the great chambers anymore, this guy, he was so accredited and so beloved by the Egyptian government and all of the people associated with the actual ruins is that he would host yoga. He would have like all kinds of hymns sung within the great chambers. They would do, yogic breathing and stuff. And it was shortly before he died that he started to see the shift in their policies that they began to disallow that. He was always heartbroken about it because it was one of his favorite things to do. And as much of a like an objective, wonderful scientist and historian as he was the foremost person to talk about the effects of resonance within the great chambers. Old John Anthony West.
Well, and something, I don't know if we recorded it. Did we talk about it at the beginning? I don't know. So we were messing around before we did this, so it's kind of hard to remember what actually made it to the episode or not. But I just want to touch on the methane leaks, right, from the tankers, and because we're having a hard time finding anything on it, and it's like it seems to be some kind of cover up. Nobody's reporting on it. I seen one guy on TikTok, the 77 Truth, or he now has 777 Truthy on TikTok because his other two accounts got banned. So he put out this video about the methane about 7 days ago, right? By the time I sent it to you. And so, anyways, we wanted to talk about it because, like he brings up in the video, and it's true, we were both trying to research it, and you can't find a lot on it. So, supposedly, there's 3 tankers in the ocean that without any malfunctions or anything like that that we could prove, they blew up and they're leaking mass amounts of methane into the ocean. And methane is more damaging than oil. And there's rumors like Adam found one where it was saying that Putin was responsible. I told him that
So
I
when
had
I
seen
when I even looked into his TikTok video, it seems like he edited it. Is that the other day I was looking at it, and so we can't corroborate 3 tankers blowing up. I did see it on a TikTok video the other day, and ever since I've tried to look it up. There was one around the Horn of Africa, there was one in China, Taiwanese waters, and there was another tanker off of Denmark. And simultaneously, according to this TikTok video, allegedly all of these methane tanker ships got destroyed. And when Delaine brought it up before I had seen the video, I thought it was interesting because obviously everybody is familiar with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that's been in the news. Is that basically the umbilicus between resource-rich Russia and the rest of Europe via Germany was blown up. And apparently the thing is not inoperable. Like apparently it's still functioning and Putin is just kind of laughing all the way to the fucking bank. And thank God, because Europeans need their energy lest they freeze and starve this winter. But it's interesting that when you see all of the ESG via corporations, when everybody's trying to keep down their footprint. Actually, I was drinking a beer the other day, and they have an ESG print on the can, and it isn't one of these. But basically, what ESG is saying is that every corporation has a responsibility to cut their carbon footprint. And that is just the most draconian concept imaginable because what they're really saying is that we're going to have to cut the product that we're able to produce for you because of this. Well, at the same time, uh, our very own government had orchestrated the attack on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, as Joe Biden had said directly in an interview months before, that if Germany doesn't divest from Russian energy, then we will end the Nord Stream pipeline. To which reporters say, "Fuck, what? What? Like you're talking about attacking vital infrastructure for entire continents." And they're like, how would you do it? And he's like, we'll find a way. We'll make it happen. Let me pull up that video here again.
So since you're bringing up the reducing of the carbon footprint and stuff, Adam, I kind of want to ask you a question. Do you think this could be leading towards more of a neon type society? And when I bring up neon, for those that don't know, it's called the line neon at Saudi Arabia. It's
And you're
going to
saying
be
Neon, neon?
no Neom as in Mary, neon.
Neon. What is neon?
So it's a Hebrew word, and it represents a soulless person, a monster, a being that lacks humanity. Right? That's what it translates from the Hebrew. It's going to be a city. I think it's 174 kilometers long or something like that. I can't remember how
Oh, the
high
one
it
they're
is.
building
Like
in Saudi
200.
Arabia, yeah. They're literally
Yeah.
building a wall that all of Saudi Arabia is going to live in, and they're saying that they could fit like hundreds of millions of people in the thing.
Yeah. So everything you need is 6 minutes walking distance from where you are. The whole facility is designed to
Well, whatever they tell
reduce
you.
the carbon footprint and to have solar panels for the glass of the wall, right? Of what you're seeing outside. Not only can it give you better light and change the weather for you inside the city, but they're solar panels that are absorbing energy, right? And it's using AI to help humans reduce the carbon footprint. So I'm asking, do you think maybe this terrorist attack, if it is a bioterrorist attack, was meant to set us up to start doing stuff like that? Because now if we end up in a society like that,
Pushing everybody to centralization, yeah, they are going to
and
have.
we're 100% controlled at that point.
Right. Okay. And so that's the issue with the Nord Stream pipeline is that what that level of energy does, and it's no mistake on account of the fact that Russia is first the most biodiverse country in the world. Like they have more demographics than any other country in the world, which isn't that surprising considering that they are also the largest contiguous country in the world. And it's also no mistake that being the largest contiguous country in the world, they also have a fuck ton of resources. Okay, and so they have been feeding Europe despite all of the Red Scare, xenophobic, full-on fucking racism that we have towards Russia. Like, I'm not necessarily in love with Russian culture or Russian people. Dating Russian women is not necessarily a thing that I'm wild about. Of course, there are always exceptions. I'm not just going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, which I've been saying a fuck ton this entire podcast. But there are so many interesting things about it. If you look at the way that Russia views the world, especially militarily, is that the greatest general is winter. It doesn't matter what human beings do. The Russian mentality is that the greatest general is winter. So they have a much more natural kind of approach, is that they are not expansionist as much as they want you to believe. They are willing to bolster their economy by sharing a pittance of what natural resources they have with the rest of Europe, upon which Europe has become dependent all this time. And so the U.S., as I'm about to show everybody, and like I'm telling you, is that it wasn't a terrorist attack, it was the U.S. There was a U.S. carrier in those waters directly above the pipeline just moments before the fucking thing blew. If you go back, like let me just turn on screen sharing. We're going to do a bit of a video of Joe Biden talking just weeks before the explosion of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Let's see what old Joe has to say.
The cyborg.
Or the clone, who knows?
Yeah.
Assurances from Chancellor Scholz today that Germany will in fact pull the plug on this project if Russia invades Ukraine. And did you discuss what the definition of invasion could be? And then Chancellor Scholz, wenn ich Sie fragen darf,
if I may ask you, Chancellor Scholz, you said there was some strategic ambiguity that was needed in terms of sanctions. I just wanted to know whether the sanctions you are envisaging and the EU is working on, and the US as well, are already finished, finalized, or is there still work ongoing? And
dass Sie das nicht sagen wollen, was genau da drin ist.
You're not really saying what the details are. Is that just an excuse for Germany maybe to not support the SWIFT measures?
Let me answer the first question first. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will. I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
I mean, first of all, does that guy have a clothespin on the back of his head holding his face together? Like, Jesus Christ. I mean, where is it? So he's de facto saying that, yes, okay, the narrative right now is that Russia destroyed the Nord Stream pipeline. Right. Because Russia, Putin is so crazy that he was willing to destroy the Nord Stream pipeline. Why wouldn't he just shut it off at the source?
And see, I was hearing the rumor that I was bringing up earlier that Biden's the one who pulled the plug, but see how there's this narrative.
I literally just said that if Germany doesn't divest from Russian resources, then we will shut it down for them. And then the German chancellor was like, what are you talking about? That's a decades-old project to build this underwater pipeline that's fueling untold trillions of potential dollars of energy to the whole of Europe via Germany. And you're just saying like, oh, we're just going to go in there and end it? Like, well, how are you going to do that? Oh, well, we'll fucking find a way, like.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. So it not only creates the dark winter that Biden often talks about. I don't know if you've seen Biden talk about the dark winter, if I need to pull that up.
No, but winter is coming.
But it is the dark winter for Europe now, because Europe has been so cut off from their energy resources and everything that the German people are going into the local forests and cutting as much lumber as they can just to make sure that they have enough heat to survive. Because since the Nord Stream 2 attack, which was absolutely us, as Biden just said, we're going to do it. And, well, how are you going to do it? It's like, we're going to do it, But at the same time, you brought up an interesting point the other day that it might be twofold, is that methane is such it's such a toxic chemical element, whatever, is that they also might be creating dead areas of fishing lanes and such. And so whereas they're not only cutting off the energy, but they might have also just completely blacked out like a fuck ton of fishing lanes because people can't have free access to the area because of the natural gas, the methane, whatever it is that's leaking into the goddamn ocean.
So from what we could find, that is one of the things, and that's what Adam and I were talking about, is this something to do with the food shortages? Because we've already got the pork plants that closed down during COVID. And what was it, 8 factories last year here in America, beef plants that blew up mysteriously, right?
Multiple, tens of multiples, yeah, all getting blowed the fuck up.
And now you got seafood getting poisoned by methane in the ocean. It's going to kill all that life around there, plants, animals, everything, right? So we're going to have food shortages all around. I mean, this is a bad deal worldwide. And you're already seeing it in stores. I mean, geez, go there and try to buy meat right now. It's almost like double the price that it was, 4 months ago.
Because they want us to eat the bugs. And so the only way they get us to eat the bugs is by removing all access to food. Like, it isn't just about all of the draconian laws that they've taken against hunters. So bow hunting is now illegal in South Australia. I can't even begin to imagine, like, what do you care what they're doing out there in the outback? Like, there's nothing out there. But if somebody is able to bow hunt like a moose, like an Australian moose, whatever you call them, then why wouldn't you allow somebody to do that? They're making bow hunting illegal in South Australia. And then at the same time, this is why it resonates with me and why I kind of consider that it isn't just about shutting down the resources of energy to Europe. It's also blackening the sea to the point that you just shut down untold numbers of fishing lanes. So you don't, and if this is something that Denmark would access, like a people that eat a lot of seafood and such, as much as a lot of Europe does, a lot of around the Mediterranean, like they have a very seafood-based diet. And how much of that did you just completely cut out? And it goes back to what you were saying about what they're talking about building in Saudi Arabia to cut your carbon footprint or whatever by putting everybody inside of a wall. Hundreds of millions of people inside of a single wall, is that they want it centralized. Now, I think that the technological effort and the engineering insight to be able to build a wall like that is pretty fucking fantastic. Like it sounds high science. It sounds like an awesome sci-fi novel. I'm all for it.
It's a $500 billion project.
If they were interested in doing such a thing, why would it be one single wall? Because they want to keep everything centralized. And it goes right back to when we were talking about the Native Americans, is that these people came from something. They came from an ultra centralized power that fell. You could say it's the Tower of Babel. You could say that it's the story that was described in Gilgamesh, that there was another global spanning high technology, high science kind of existence. The Native Americans were just far too responsible and far too perfect in being embedded in nature that couldn't have happened from a vacuum. It seemed like they did so to be completely decentralized. Like between the Navajo and the Cherokee, the Crow, the Blackfoot, the Ute, is that you could even move between a tribe within the Blackfoot. You go to your next door neighbors, they don't speak the same language. They were that decentralized, and they were mobile. They were perfectly nomadic, and they were perfectly bonded. No matter what differences they had with each other, they were perfectly bonded to nature. Leave no trace kind of approach. And so if they really were worried about carbon footprints and everything, I think everybody would be terribly happy to have a circular house that's built like a triangle that you live in, and that you get to have a fireplace in the middle. You get a comfy sleeping bag. You take some animal hide and you make some stuffed animals for your kids. You eat all the fucking meat you want. You grow corn when you can. You do whatever it is that the land demands. And then from there, but nobody's talking about that kind of lifestyle, which is counterintuitive to the facets of technology that we've developed, is that a lot of the aspects of technology allow us to decentralize. However, so often those get put through the funnel or the filter of centralization to where we'll probably get censored left and right for a lot of the points that we made in this video. Although, we do everything we can to kind of back up our points. And really, we're just shooting from the hip and talking shit like we're a bunch of goofballs. I don't know why any government agency would worry about two chongos like us. But
definitely reporting on this methane, I feel like it's something because no one's talking about it, I feel
well, right. And so they're telling us like the narrative is I don't drive. Like I haven't driven in almost 20 years because I love driving. I love the act of driving. I love cars. I love motorcycles, but traffic is the devil. And I don't want to become too rely on having to commute back and forth every day, not because of like my carbon footprint for a single car or if I'm, carpooling or whatever, but more because it isn't about my carbon footprint. It's more about the time that I use. I don't want to have road rage. I don't want to get stuck behind a soccer mom who's like throwing soda cans at my fucking windshield and shit because, we're stuck behind the same light or whatever. Like, I think that I love driving. Drivers are dangerous. And that's why I've just completely divested. So when you hear about these banks and say ExxonMobil, where ExxonMobil does like a propaganda bit about how ride your bike to work day. And it's like, asshole, I already do that. Like, what are you talking about when you're blowing up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline so that y'all could get your hooks into all of Europe and start selling them energy? What about that carbon footprint?
So on Exxon, though, aren't they the ones behind cuties? And cuties actually rot and decay faster, and they're using the water from the trash water from their factories to water these freaking vegetables and fruits that they serve to us that we freaking eat.
Right.
Reducing the carbon footprint.
Centralized banking has never worked. Like if you look at any empire throughout history, the second that a particular empire tries to divest from centralized banking and they try to go to more of a state model of banking, that empire is wiped out. That's basically the foundation as to what led to World War I, is that's what Germany was talking about. That's what a lot of the empires like the Ottoman Empire was talking about, the Turkish Empire, and just stomped out. And so it became like this blood feud between the families, as you're saying, is that the ruler, the Kaiser, the crown, and the czar, all are words that are based off of Caesar. Kaiser, czar, crown, basically. King is synonymous with Caesar. These people were all related. They were at best cousins. Some of them were like stepbrothers, stepsisters. And so when they figured out that the jig was up and that centralized control was coming to an end with the printing press, with the advancement of air flight specifically, I think, like after the Wright brothers and everything, they began to see a world that had access to itself. And before World War I, that was true of anybody. Like if you had the ability to get on a plane, passports didn't exist, visas didn't exist, personal identification didn't exist. It was after World War I that all of these things came together after the oligarchs tricked the whole of humanity to go to war with each other and eliminate untold levels of human population. World War II was an interesting echo in that regard, is that they then began to realize how necessary it was to institutionalize propaganda in every single thing that you do. If you're buying food, well, the food itself has propaganda on it. Think about cereal boxes. Cereal boxes have fun games that tell you about how to accept LGBTQ, or they're trying to tell you, you do like neat little conundrums about solving a crossword puzzle or whatever. And it's like, this is food. I don't need all of this information. Like the only reason that you have ingredients on the food that you're giving me is that you're telling us de facto that there are things that don't belong in there. If you get a slab of meat, I go to a nice carniceria and I want me some, the other day I'm buying some pig blood to seed my mom's garden with so that it gets nutrients and everything. There's no ingredients on that. It's pig blood. Like, what do you want to know? You want to know the pig's name? You want to know the farmer's name? You want to know like what the pig ate? Like, and so it's kind of important when you're eating beef, say that you want something that's grass-fed and grass-finished, as opposed to grain-fed and grain-finished, because that's going to cause problems. But when you are buying ingredients for something like, say, a simple pasta, and it's got a list of ingredients like this, the only reason that's there is to tell you what shouldn't be there, and you just saying like, well, fuck it, I'm hungry anyways. This is why we have obesity here in the US, and why they don't have obesity in the pasta capital of the world like Italy, is because they're eating heirloom ingredients, and you don't need to be told. It's water, it's wheat, and it's yeast and salt, and that's it.
Yeah, but dude, think about all the, since talking about meat, what about the freaking glue that they put on it that makes it look like fat? That's why I don't eat the fat on the meat, dude. I cut all that crap off because in reality, it probably isn't fat.
Get good meat because you have to eat fat. You can't live without fat. We need fat. Like that's the whole point of the meat, is getting as much fat content as possible. That's why fish is so healthy for you, is because the musculature of fish is synonymous with the fat content of it. So anytime you eat fish, you're getting the fat content that your body really needs. When you're eating terrestrial animals like bison, elk, whatever, like that's a lean animal. You have to capture as much fat as possible to get into your diet.
But now when they're taking edible glue and taking two pieces of meat and sticking it together, and you cook it and you think that's fat, and it's not.
Right.
It's edible glue, and I cut all that crap off. You know, you can tell it is. It's all sticky and everything. Not fat.
And that's what you get from centralized food production and food markets, is that when you go to Walmart or even a Sam's Club, or hell, you go to a Whole Foods. You go to a Whole Foods and they're going to have that glue, like you're saying, on it. It's not actual fat.
So I think that's a good spot to wrap up at.
I think so. Have we got anything for the listeners of all of our ramblings? We love you all. For anybody that watched and enjoyed the video, found anything insightful, or have anything to say to us, like any input that you would like to give us in terms of subjects that we could talk about, then let us know again. Just hit us up on social media, and we're going to be putting out episodes more frequently, I think.
Yeah, now that we're figuring this out, hopefully we figured it out.
We just did a solid hour and a half, and I think it worked pretty good. I can't see when I share screens, but we'll see how well that worked out. But I think we're on to a good thing. And at that, yeah, everybody stay happy, stay safe, and keep looking to the horizon.
All right.
Adios.